Well, hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Path Podcast Season 2. We are so glad that you have decided to join us. I am Jason.
I'm Derrick.
And we are joined today by a very special guest. Mr. Kenn Kington is here. We're going to ask him a few questions, pick his brain, since he's an expert on being a parent. And
it just means I've failed in more ways than most people have. Yeah.
That's right. But I'm going to let Derrick kind of take over here, and then we'll just have a little discussion here and talk together.
Absolutely, yeah. Ken, thanks so much for being with us
Absolutely.
today. Ken is preaching both of our services today, October 11th, and then this will air
like a week Monday,
later.
Yeah.
So if you're listening this, then you
missed it.
You missed it. You should go back and watch it again.
Yeah, it's recorded, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess in the show notes we can put some like a link.
Yeah,
to
we'll
that.
put a link to that.
Perfect.
Yeah. We can do that.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, but then kind of leading towards, how you became passionate about helping parents. I know you kind of said that was one of your bullseyes with speaking and how you like to help. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, as far as background, I've been married 25 years as of August 8th this year.
Congratulations.
And we celebrated in COVID by basically just staying home and cooking out. But 25 years, amazing woman. And we have 4 kids. Our 2 oldest, Graham and Cody, 22 and 21, they are 10 months and 27 days apart.
Oh, wow.
And I'd never heard the term Irish twins until we had them, but we each other's biggest fans, and just incredible watching them with each other. They're doing great. One just graduated college, one's in aviation school, and he's flying again, so he's happy. Yeah. My daughter Kennedy is 17. She is actually a cancer survivor. She is one of the most precious hearts I've ever met, and one of the most tough kids ever, and just a neat person. And then our youngest Doc came into our world about 5 years ago. We were not looking. Another podcast for another time, but we had tried to adopt after our kids twice, and it just did not work out. And so we did some fostering. Friends of ours fostered, terminated the mother's parental rights because she didn't show up, and we ended up adopting him after doing respite for him for a while, and just absolutely loved Doc. 15 years old, and with all he's been through, we just laugh because we're like, about 98% of all his issues are God's just healed, which is really cool. That's and now awesome. It's just, hey, while you're in the shower for an hour and a half, find the soap at some point. That's our new challenge, but it's just great. And we, so I think it's through that and just the process of parenting. I found a lot of my comedy material was about my kids and growing up, and people were like, hey, but man, you stopped and you shared this about that. Go into more about what you learned in that way. And that's just been a joy to get to share that. And I'll be doing a little bit more of that with Focus on the Family as well this year. But it's a center of a bullseye. And I love talking about it. And I love the path. I love what you guys are doing. Apparently on the path, though, if you're listening and not watching, you have to grow a beard and shave your head at some point.
That's right.
So I know I don't belong on the path yet, but it's good to be as part of the path.
That's right. Yeah, we're very slowly trying to start a monastery.
You're on your way.
We shave our head out of necessity.
Yeah.
We would not recommend.
Going on up here. Yeah.
I would not recommend it if you don't have to. But, yeah.
If I could grow it out and not have like the cul-de-sac going on up here, I'd be very happy.
Well, I did have a buddy of mine once, and he shaves his, and he's bald on top, and he said, the way my wife tells people, grass doesn't grow on a playground. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do with that, but that's awesome.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ken, we had a couple of questions that we just want to kind of shoot at you here and just get your thoughts on stuff. So,
sure.
The first question is this: say you're in an elevator and you have 90 seconds to tell some struggling parents where to start to kind of get moving in the right direction. What would you say?
Not to sound churchy at all, but I really have learned through frustration, through being overwhelmed, with boys that close together, and then my daughter going through cancer, I can't do it alone.
Yeah.
I literally can't do it alone. And I really did. I closed Sunday morning with the the prayer that I learned, and it was out of desperation. It was just, God help. Do you not see what I'm going through? Do you not care? And when I prayed that honestly and then listened, I realized he does care. And he does have the answer for that situation. Sometimes it is the perspective of what I'm going through. Sometimes it is the strength to get through it. But sometimes it's just peace. You know what? I'm with you and it's going to be okay. But every time I would say in that elevator, engage with God. And then secondly, realize we're not alone. And if they push and they're like, well, what's one piece of advice? And that's what I get a lot.
Yeah.
It really goes back to the couple that I talked to, and I saw their 2 perfect kids, and I'm like, I want those. And I'm like, well, they're not perfect. But if you give them your attention when they want it and crave it and beg for it, then they will give you their attention when they need to. Yeah. And I'm telling you, now being a dad for 22 years, that is 100% true. I, through exhaustion, would give them time and play Legos and Thomas the Train and basketball in the backyard when I was exhausted, and it didn't matter. But we now have time. My boys are in their 20s, and they're like, Dad, can we go have breakfast? I need to talk about some stuff. And it has been all through their adolescence, all through high school. It was the same. And I had parents that were asking me then, hey, how did you do that? Why are your boys so free to talk to you? And I didn't want to say, well, too late for you, but no. And I just tell them, start spending time. They're like, well, it's awkward. And I'm like, I know, but just spend time and take them on errands and be together. And that's it. You give them your attention when they want it, and they'll give you their attention when they need to.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, I appreciate that you said, your prayer was, what you learned, God help, and that's, and you also talked about, your kids aren't perfect, and then even that couple that you talked to, there weren't. That's kind of the point of this series, or has become the point. I don't know that it really was when we started planning it a year ago, but this, imperfect family series we've been doing, we've been looking at different family relationships or positions in the family. And that's what we kind of said is that, look, we're all imperfect, but it just drives us to realize our need for God, our need for Christ. And so, I think that's huge. It's something we say, but it's like, it's really true, we just need God's help, and, he's going to help us. And I love that you said, sometimes it's peace, sometimes it's, just knowing that he's in control and you don't have all the answers yet. Right. But, I think that's huge for us to, really realize, God wants to help us. And, too often, me as a fixer, me as a, typical male, I'm like, well, look, I need to do this and this and this and this. But then at the end of the day, I probably just need to be quiet and listen and let God kind of work through some things too.
Yeah, and let him use you in that. And God knows that we're imperfect. I firmly believe that the reason he gives children no cognitive memory till at least like 2.5, 3 years old is because he knows you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're going to screw up. And I'm going to give you a couple years to figure some of it out.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said about just giving your kids time when they want it. I've noticed that even in my kids, I'm not as far along. We have 4 also, and but one thing I've noticed specifically with my son is that most of the time when he wants my time is when it's super inconvenient for me, and yet I find that when I take the time to bring him into what I'm doing, like even when he's just like, I don't care what you're doing, Dad, I just want to be with Dad, kind of thing, that those end up being some of the most precious times to me, when it's as simple as I'm gonna take Merritt with me to Home Depot or whatever, and and I know that like he talks about, hey Dad, you remember that time we did whatever, and it's like, yeah, we went to Home Depot and bought some screws. He's like, yeah, I loved that, and it's like, man, those times like that are eye opening to me of both how difficult and how simple parenting can be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I think, and so I totally 100% agree with the giving the time thing. I think that's so important, and I think it's something that we overlook so easily too, though, because a lot of times it's just I don't want to right now. I'm busy. Just let me get this done. It'll be a lot easier if you just let me do this. But some of those times, and I look back even to my own dad when he let me help him work on the car or something,
Right.
or whatever, just help him cut the grass, and those times made a big impact on me too.
Well, and I tell you, another area is doing what we're doing here. I eat with friends a lot, and I'll have other friends, and I'll share a frustration like, man, I'm just overwhelmed time-wise right now. And God uses other people to say, hey, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine out in Arizona who is an incredible dad, runs a very large printing company. He said that an older gentleman that he had talked to, he was just talking about how he's struggling to get to all the games and all this stuff. And the guy told him, he says, I struggled with that when I was your age too, but here's what I did. I'd stop and ask myself the question, is it the right amount of effort on the right thing at the right time? And he said, if it's a yes to all three, I know that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
And so in those times where it's like, gosh, I'm really busy, I can't tell you the number of times I've stopped and they're being interrupted and going, okay, is it the right thing? Well, obviously the right thing to play with them. Is it the right amount of time? It's going to take me 20 minutes. Yeah. And is it for the right reasons? Yeah, I can get this other stuff in a little bit. It just causes me to think through that. And I can tell you, I've left in the middle of the day from work that I knew I needed to get done and went to a practice because that's what I needed to do at that time. We needed to have that time driving home, stopping to get a big, the bladder expander drink at wherever and gas, but we needed that time.
Yeah.
So it's from His truth, it's from His presence, but it's also from one another that we're going to glean a lot. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, you're exactly right. All right, well, moving on to the next question. What would you say to a parent who thinks maybe they've missed their chance? So maybe they have, their kids are in their late teens, early 20s, starting to exert large amounts of independence, and a parent that says, gosh, I missed this. What would you say to a parent who thinks they find themselves in that position?
I would say twofold. One, that kids, I don't care how old they are, they may have a resentment that you didn't spend time with them earlier, but the way to make up for that is to spend time with them. And I would say, one, understand that it may feel awkward at first, absolutely, but there's still no substitute for time. And to push through that awkwardness, I would say for if it's a boy, men tend to connect better while doing something. I know my boys now, we can have great talks about everything, but I find we go into the real parts of life when we're playing a sport together, or we're going on a trip together, or we're at a game, and it's just conversations between innings or quarters or whatever. It's as you go. But if those who feel like I've missed it, you haven't. Your best opportunities are still ahead. And to just get that in mind. And if you set aside time and like, well, I'm busy, then respectfully say, hey, I really want to spend some time with you. I really like us to do something together. And there may be a little initial resistance, but to just stay at it and just, they'll see your heart. And if your heart is, I really just want to be with you. I want time with you because you're amazing, and I just want to know how I can encourage what you're about. That's going to melt down that wall after time.
Yeah, that's a great word. I think so often that, so our son just started playing soccer, and it's the first sport he's ever played. Now, I've never played soccer a day in my life. You probably can tell by my physique. I'm not a soccer
You're more of a goalie.
Yeah. Wait, what position doesn't have to move? Yeah, that was one. Yeah. But I was a football player.
Yeah.
And I would love for Mary to play football, but he loves soccer, and so I'm having to learn soccer as he's learning soccer. And it's the same way for my girls. Two of our girls are in dance, and one of our daughters is super artistic, like really good painter. And I have to insert myself into that. And even though it may be, no offense, but I don't really like ballet. That's not my cup of tea. But I'll go.
The mental picture of you in tights is disturbing. So don't go down that road.
I can appreciate that and understand that. I don't disagree with you because it's disturbing for myself. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right that just in showing interest in what your kids like, that's huge for a kid.
Oh, absolutely. And what I am discovering, because both my boys followed my love for basketball, and I coached them through middle school and AAU, and it was a blast, and that was very easy for me. Then my daughter, because of the cancer, really took a toll on her coordination. So she wasn't so much an athlete, but she loved dance, and she loved art, and she loved other things. And I found that she just wanted me to be there.
Yeah.
And I could ask questions like, okay, when you guys did this, how did y'all do that in sync? How much did you practice? What's that called?
Yeah.
And she loved just telling me about it. Yeah. And then now my youngest son, who we adopted about 5 years ago, very much like you with the soccer football, he likes sports, but he just likes to play. He's not really into them, but he loves fishing, loves bass fishing. Yeah. I'm not a fisherman, but what he loves is when I go with him. Yeah. And he loves that he can show me how to do things and show me. I was on the side of the pond, on the lake one time, and I look over and he's just kind of looking at me through the corner of his eye, and I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, you're doing it wrong. And I was like, dude, I have no problem with you showing me how to do it. How do I do it right? And he came over and he showed me, and he's like, you want to do it kind of like this? And within 3 minutes, I caught a 4-pound bass, and I'm like, what the crud?
Yeah, what just happened?
And he's just like, and he was more excited that I succeeded than when he fishes in a tournament. And so they just crave that time together. And I think it's good for us to be able to be humble and go, I don't know about this. Show me what I need to look for. Show me what's really good and cool, and tell me what you're working on, and how can I help with that? And they just want us to be interested.
Yeah, that's a great point. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Yeah, I think too often, like we feel like we have to be the expert, right? Yeah. And so maybe that's the downfall, is that we don't need to be the expert. We need to help them be the expert, or let them know that we're learning from them. Yeah.
Well, and I think when we're taking them along with us, to be humble and just go, I don't know how to do this, so we're going to go do this. Or some of those powerful words are, I don't know. And going back to your question a little bit about the older kids, there's probably going to be a time where the kids go, you know what, I don't understand why you did this or why you didn't do that. And when we can own that and just go, I messed up there. Yeah. You're going to find it's hard to believe, but this is my first time as a parent. And I didn't have all the answers. And I really tried not to screw up big, but I made a mistake. And I can remember probably a handful of times, even as my kids were growing up, where my wife brought to my attention, hey, I don't think it warranted you raising your voice there and whatnot. And I went back and I said, guys, here's the deal. What you did was not right, and I needed to address that. But the way I did it was not right. So I apologize for the way I did that. Yeah. And they're just like, no problem, And it's that fine line, but I think God can give us wisdom on walking that fine line.
That's a great point. I've had to do that exact thing within the last 24 hours.
Only once. That's impressive.
Well, it was a good day yesterday. but yeah, I totally understand that. And I think that our kids learn a lot in that by seeing us go, you know what, I messed up, and I need you to forgive me. They learn a lot about just how to be a human being, but also I think they learn a lot about our Savior when we look at that and say, you know what, I messed up, I need you to forgive me just like God forgave me, and God forgives you. Yeah. I think those can be some huge parenting moments there.
Big time.
Yeah. All right, so we've sort of touched on this already some, but I guess this would be more of kind of a summary of what we've talked about so far. But
okay,
what would you say are some best practices for parents to get headed in the right direction? So maybe it's a couple who they're pregnant, they're about to be first-time parents, or maybe they have young kids, and gosh, I've been fumbling through this. But what are some best practices to get moving in the right direction as far as trying to be a good parent?
Well, if you're pregnant expecting your first, realize you are as big an expert and know all the answers more right now than you ever will the rest of your life. Because from here, once that baby comes, you realize, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah. And realize, I think one of the practices is realize everybody else had to do this for the first time. Yeah. and give yourself a break and just realize it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask others, and realize that probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give is to really work at doing it together. God designed us as dads to be a little bit better in some areas that moms are, and moms a lot of areas that are better than we are. And like I shared today, just I was very much the yes and no guy, and here's the rails, and we got to establish clear boundaries, and that's true. Yeah. But my wife was the one of grace and the reality of you don't have to be hard on everything. You can accomplish the same by this way, and see her magically do that. One of my favorites was the boys were digging in the backyard, and they came in and they're like, Mom, we need a bigger shovel. And it's like, okay, what do you need to shovel? What are you digging for? And they're like, we're digging to find elephants. And instead, I would have been like, you know what? It's a whole, that's not the way elephants are found. And I would have gotten very practical. She was like, oh my goodness, okay. And she went and got them 2 big shovels, knowing they're going to get tired in a minute, and they're not going to find an elephant. But let them go. Let them have that. And build in time. I think the other piece is not only do it together, but build in time as a family. Start right out. We're going to walk together as a family through the neighborhood with the baby. And let that grow into, we're going to walk and have a playtime in the middle of that. We were in a new neighborhood where we were in the first third of homes built. So they were always building these other huge mountains of dirt when our boys were little. And our entertainment was, hey, grab your trucks and your shovels. We're going to the dirt pile tonight. Yeah. And that was a consistent part. And doing that together, that grew into as they get a little bit older. We have a pool in our neighborhood across the street. Was after dinner, we're going to go to the pool. Can we go to the pool? Absolutely. And we go as a family. We play a little bit. They get exhausted. They go to sleep real good when they're exhausted. So, but establish a consistent family time. If not every day, at least a couple times a week, that this is our time together and we're going to do this. And anymore, it's not usually around a dinner table or whatever. We do that. And my wife, again, brilliant. She picks a show that we can binge watch together at dinner 3 times a week when we are all together. Yeah. So I would say do it together with your wife and have a time as a family that you just establish that family time. And I didn't realize how valuable that was to our kids until they got into high school. And they would come home and say, yeah, we're talking to friends, and they're like, yeah, when you have family time and you go do this and this and this, and their friends are like, what are you talking about? Right. No, you know how you have dinner together and then you go all get ice cream together. You go walk and go to the pool together, and they're like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. And to them, to our kids, that was a value. Yeah. So I do it together with your spouse and do something together as a family. Those would be the 2 big I would give.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Any thoughts, Derrick?
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think spending that time together is huge, and then even trying to find like that individual time you talked about in your message today as well.
The one-on-one time with each kid.
Yeah, we try that. It's hard. You have to fight for it, but it means a lot to them. To kind of have that one-on-one time too.
Well, and I can tell you, it sounds almost like a platitude, but I'm not talking about making that one trip for a week with each kid. I found if I just make sure that I'm spending a couple hours one-on-one each week with my kids, it's monumental. And I'm not talking about, okay, what are we going to do? It's like with my youngest son, I'm like, hey, I got to run errands. You're going with me. Yeah. And he goes with me, and we go to Home Depot. Yeah. We go to my mailbox. We go to the bank. We go. Yeah. And I found after initially him being a little resistant at times, he now just doesn't question it. I'm like, yeah, I want to go with that. Can we go by here? Sure, we can. And now it's like, hey, can we go to that bank so we can go to Field and Stream? I want to look at some lures. I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. And it's time together. So it doesn't have to be constructed date night
No, it doesn't.
time. It just literally just time. What are you naturally doing that you can drag one with you
Yeah, I think right. You said earlier, as you go. And I think
as you go?
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
A great point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. This is where we turn it over to you. What are some thoughts or some reactions that you might have to what we've talked about today? Maybe something that Ken said sparked some thought for you. We'd love to hear about that. You can email us at thepath@lafayettefirst.life. We'd love to hear from you, or you can comment on this YouTube video. But until next time, I am Jason.
I'm Derrick.
And I'm Ken, and hope to come back sometime.
That's right. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah.
But thanks for joining us on The Path, and we will see you real soon.